Let's see. You are using the computer audio. Okay. It's gonna take a minute. Let's see here. Hi guys. I'm gonna let you folks in here. Oh, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. There you are. Get some more people coming in. Come on, come on. Hi, Whitney. I see you. No, I don't. There's a bunch of people. Zoom, 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 zoom. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. I need to find. Allowing people. Oh, we're still early. To me, that'd be a rush. Histology. This is you guys. And let's see. No, it's wrong histology, not this histology. I need to do histology slides. That's what I need. This is lab. Figure out what class I'm in. Let me fix it like that. There we go. Now we're all ready to go. It's still early. According to my clock, it's got a few minutes. So, how's it going? You guys doing all right? See some of you. There's 16 of y'all out there today. Zooming. Everybody zooms for the first hour, right? And then we got this is a 2-hour lab. So we Zoom for the first hour, and then the last hour, if we need to, go to lab for 30-minute pops, which I don't see any reason to, so don't feel obligated to go to lab unless I tell you, unless you really need something to see me in person. If not, we're just going to forego that. So the Zoom meeting, you're going to get everything you're going to need to know. Sound like a plan? Still good? Y'all doing all right? Good 2 minutes. I want to start early. Oh, I see a thumbs up. Hey, thanks, Sarah. I don't know how to do that. How do I do that? Can I how do I do that? I'm learning how to play with this stuff. Chat. I gotta do it with a chat. And no, let's see. There's got to be some kind of annotate. Oh man, that looks like a bunch of stuff I don't want to mess with. Still learning how to use this thing. I used it all last semester. I didn't really play with it though. I just kind of lectured. There's still letting people in. We're up to 23 people. Where's my? There's chat stuff. Trying to look how to like send you guys a thumbs up or whatever. I don't see anything like that. Just click on chat. Let's do that. Okay, almost time to start. It is now officially 10 a.m. and you guys are my Zoology 1161 section 90 class, my Wednesday 10 o'clock class. And today is Wednesday, January 20th, 2021. Lots of 20s in there. And today is actually our first lab. Last week we, introduced the course. And then today we're going to get into our histology slides. And if you go to, excuse me, my courses, you'll find there's all kinds of stuff in there, but this is basically the only thing I really am interested in. This PowerPoint is the only thing I'm really going to talk about. The only thing you really need to study. Okay. And what I did is traditionally when I'm doing my histology lab is every semester I have my students study 13 different histological slides and basically identify the slide, what part of the body it came from, and then what are the tissues that they can find on them. And so what I did is, rather than forcing you guys into lab and preparing slides and studying slides, which takes, a while, I just took pictures of everything and look at it like that. So you're going to kind of get gypped on the microscopy skills, but most of you are never going to probably touch a microscope after the semester anyway. So anyway, our first slide is of the integument. That's your skin, right? Your integument. Now, here's a section that's taken from the bottom of the foot or the sole. Here's a section taken from the top of the head or the scalp. So actually, your first slide is actually 2 slides. So you're actually technically looking at 14 different slides instead of just 13, because you have 2 skin slides. And the reason why I've done that is because there's differences, obviously, from one end of the animal to the next, or one end of the human to the next, the part that you stand on versus the part that's on the top of your head. What's the most obvious difference you see between these 2 areas? Well, you got hair on the top of your head, but you got no hair on the bottom of your feet. That's a good indicator, a good key to figure out, where the skin is from. Where's this integument from? Big, thick like that with no hair, probably the bottom of the foot. Or it could be the palm of the hand, but I got my section from the sole, okay? And then the relatively thin layer with hair, top of the head, okay? How about that? So if you look at the skin or the integument from any part of the body, it typically there's 3 general areas right here. See, epidermis right here, this big section right here, and then the dermis, this section right here, and then they can hardly barely see underneath that hypodermis, or subcutaneous layer is also called, which just means under the skin. Now each of these layers, and here it looks different. This little blue, purple color right here, that's the epidermis, and then the dermis is all this from here all the way down as far as you can see. You don't see hypodermis on here, but all of this stuff is dermis. Now they look different. It's because they're different types of tissues. Now the terms epidermis, dermis, hypodermis, those are not the names of tissues. Those are the names of regions or structures of the skin. Okay, but they are made out of different types of tissues, and that's what you're challenged to figure out. What kind of tissue are they? And so we're going to look at that. So let's look at the sole of the foot first. All right, here's the epidermis right here, and it's made out of a specific type of tissue that covers and lines. All right, and covering and lining tissue is always called epithelial tissue. All right. Now there's different types of epithelial tissue. This particular type of epithelial tissue, since it's made out of thin, flat cells that are stacked on top of each other. Man, this is probably 30 or 40 cells deep. We say it's stratified. The stratified flat cells, stratified squamous epithelium. That's literally what it means, okay? And then in parentheses, I have the word keratinized. Well, what does that mean? Well, keratinized just means possesses the protein keratin. So wherever you have keratin, that structure is keratinized. But let me tell you something. You're only going to have keratinized tissue associated with your skin. That's the only place it occurs. And the keratin, the protein keratin, comes from a special kind of cell called a keratinocyte. So keratinocytes make keratin, and they only occur in the epidermis of the skin. So there you go. Now, this whole thing, the entire 100% of the epidermis is made out of stratified squamous epithelium that's keratinized. See that? See this bracket right here? This bracket right here is talking about the same stuff. So here you go. Now, but you obviously see there's a transition that happens right here. See this dark red, and it kind of looks kind of light, reddish pink. What's the difference between this layer and this layer? Well, this layer right here is alive. Those are living keratinocytes. And from here up, those are all dead keratinocytes. Why would you do that? Well, it's supposed to be like that, okay? This thick layer of dead cells helps protect you. And it's this protein keratin, this dry protein that helps envelop your integument, your skin. And so there it protects against foreign invaders, coming in, dirt and germs getting in to deeper, more sensitive tissues, because this is like inside your body down here. And of course, it forms like a veneer on your outside of your body, like a cuticle, to prevent your body from losing body water. So it helps retard water loss. And so it's all kinds of great things. But anyway, it looks very, very, very distinct. So name this tissue, all this tissue from here to here, which forms the epidermis. The name of the tissue that forms the epidermis is stratified squamous epithelium. Okay. And you're going to see, obviously, the exact same tissue, the exact same skin region on the top of the head, but it looks different, right? It would be, of course, has hair, would be very, very thin, because you don't need a big, thick layer of dead cells on the top of your head, right? Because it's not exposed to as much abrasive trauma as the bottom of your feet or the palms of your hand. Okay? So that makes sense. So what's next? Well, this little layer right here, see that little bump right there? And then there's another little bump, another little bump, a little bump, all right there. If you look carefully, the tissue that's in there is different than the tissue down here. Now it looks very much the same, but it's a little bit lighter. You notice, you see that? These little bumps that are sticking up like that, they're called dermal papillae, okay? Dermal for, the dermis of the skin, and papillae is plural for the word papilla, all right? What's a papilla? Well, a papilla it means nipple. So if something is papillary, it's nipple-like. So I guess to an early anatomist, these things look like little nipples sticking up. And so the papillary layer of the dermis, the region of the dermis has these little nipple-looking things poking up, is filled with a specific type of connective tissue, okay? It's a loose connective tissue. When you talk about connective tissue, see connective tissue in general is a supporting and structural type of tissue. It provides support and internal structural integrity, okay? And so it does so by different means, different ingredients, all right? Sometimes it's dense and thick, and sometimes it's loose and very delicate, all right? Well, this particular tissue, connective tissue that's filling these papillae is a loose kind of connective tissue, delicate. There's not a lot of collagen or protein fibers in there. That's what makes it lighter looking, okay? It's known as areolar connective tissue. Areolar connective tissue is a very light, delicate loose connective tissue that allows for space for other structures to occur. It's kind of like packing material. You're never going to just have air in an organ. You know, there's always going to be tissue of some sort, you know, filling up every little nook and cranny. And that's what areolar connective tissue basically is this little space filler. And so what are these little dermal papillae for? Well, when we study the skin, these dermal papillae we're going to see are to accommodate your dermal capillaries. Dermal capillaries are the blood vessels that are feeding the surface of the skin. And so ideally, you're going to have blood vessels and nerves occupying these little papillae. And so there's not a lot of room to fit in a bunch of protein fibers and so on and so forth. So you invest a loose connective tissue, okay? And so in the papillae, you're always going to have areolar connective tissue, okay? You got that? Now, what about all this stuff down here? Now, if you look at this, it looks like the same thing as this, but it's just has more reddish fibers in it. Well, it's exactly what it is. To tell you the truth, there's really no difference between areolar connective tissue and dense irregular connective tissue other than the proportion of collagen fibers in the matrix. And the collagen fibers is what's giving it its color. See, it kind of looks like shredded wheat. See this little reddish little bands going every which way. Doesn't look like it's arranged in any kind of different, any particular pattern or anything. It's all just kind of random. So you got these random little collagen fibers just kind of wadded up in there every which way. That's what makes it irregular. The word dense just means that there's a lot of them in there. So this densely packed versus, see, it's lighter right here. That's loose. Loose versus dense. So this is dense irregular connective tissue. Now this zone down here of the dermis, see, all of this is dermis. Dermis from here all the way down to here. All of this is dermis, but this portion of the dermis where you have dense irregular connective tissue is known as the reticular layer of the dermis. So your dermis is stratified or layered, all right? You have a papillary layer and a reticular layer. The papillary layer is areolar. The reticular layer is dense irregular. Okay, you got that? Can you hear the construction going on? Sounds like somebody's cutting something. Anyway. All right. So here's kind of this same thing, but a different slide. Obviously, you get different colors and stuff, but the same part of the body. It's still at the bottom of the foot. And I switched to this slide because it's a better shot of the subcutaneous tissue or the hypodermis, okay? And this is another connective tissue altogether. See right here, this is the reticular layer. And then way up there, these are the dermal papillae. That's where you have areolar connective tissue, and this is dense irregular connective tissue. And this obviously is another kind of connective tissue right here. It's another type of loose connective tissue. So you have loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue, loose connective tissue. But this loose connective tissue is different than this loose connective tissue up here. This is called adipose connective tissue. Do not confuse areolar with adipose. Areolar, just regular loose connective tissue. Remember the space filler. Adipose is kind of like a space filler too, but it's made out of a special type of cell called an adipocyte. And adipocytes are these large, thin-walled cells. You barely see them. I'm going to have them zoom in and show you a close-up of them here in a little bit. But they're large, thin-walled cells that contain a lipid droplet. And when you have collections of adipocytes, you produce adipose connective tissue, or you commonly refer to adipose connective tissue as fat. That's what fat looks like. This is fat underneath the microscope right here. And fat is made out of adipocytes or adipose connective tissue, okay? And it, in mammals, humans are mammals, right? A type of vertebrate that are hairy, all right? Produce milk and so on and so forth. We have subcutaneous fat or adipose connective tissue in the hypodermis to serve as a thermal insulation. So helps keeps us warm blooded. Okay, so there you go. There's adipose. Here, like I told you, there's a close up. This particular slide is magnified about 400 times of adipose connective tissue, and you can see the individual adipocytes. You know, it kind of looks like you're looking through chicken wire or something, doesn't it? Or some people say it looks like dried soap bubbles or whatever. Or somebody says it looks like a whole bunch of little signet rings. You know, I guess it looks like signet rings, but it's just a close up of adipose connective tissue, made just a whole bunch of just individual fat cells or adipocytes. This hollow space right here, that's where the lipid droplet used to be. Okay. Now remember, this is cut through, a thin slice through it. As soon as you cut it, you know, all the stuff's going to leak out. So it's just empty. The dark little spot you see right here, there's another dark little spot there, one right there, one right there. That's the nucleus of each of the cells. Then the nucleus and all the other cytoplasmic organelles just kind of get pushed over to one side. And usually what's, you know, filling up the space is all that lipid droplet. It's like a little oily droplet. I don't know if you ever handled like chicken fat or some kind of animal fat. It's kind of oily, greasy. That's lipid that leaked out from your adipocytes. Okay, so there you go. So here's basically the same thing with a different part of the body, the top of the head. Look how little it is. This is stratified squamous epithelium forming the epidermis. That's the little bitty thing right there. That's the epidermis. This is your dead little layer of cells, a little flaky layer right there. And then the dark purplish layer is the living layer. And you can see how the living layer is continuous with the hair follicles and so forth. And here's the shaft of the hair sticking out of them. All right. We'll talk more detail about structures of the skin when we study the skin. But for histology, I'm just interested in the name of the tissue that forms the epidermis, which is stratified squamous epithelium that's keratinized. You got that? Now, so we've seen this already, but now we're looking at it on the head. And likewise, anywhere you got skin, you got an epidermis, then you have a dermis. This is the dermis, all right? This little layer of the dermis, that's the papillary layer where you have areolar connective tissue. See how you can see it's different. It's kind of grainy, opposed to like big chunks down here. Little grainy area there. It's loose connective tissue. Down here, it's all dense connective tissue. A little grainy area up there where the dermal papillae would be located. Papillary layer. So the areolar connective tissue and the papillary layer. So all this big zone down here, it's also the dermis, but it's the reticular layer of the dermis. The reticular layer of the dermis has dense, irregular connective tissue. All these irregularly arranged collagen fibers in there. Got that? That's the skin. Now we're moving on. I think we're looking at like 4 slides today. This is our second of 4, I think. Something like that. This is our esophagus. I do about an hour's worth, I think. I think it's about 4 slides. Anyway, your esophagus, that's the tube that connects your mouth to your stomach. And it is a hollow organ. And this is a cross section. I'm talking about, if you were in my lecture this morning or watched it or Zoomed it, I talked about sections and planes, right? And this kind of section, that kind of section. Excuse me. This is a cross section through the esophagus. And so you can view down the hollow part of the esophagus. This is where the food goes, right in there. The hollow part of an organ like this is called the lumen, L-U-M-E-N, L-U-M-E-N, the lumen. Lumen, because like illuminate, it's like where light comes through, because this is a light from a photomicrograph, from a light microscopy, you know, because it's a picture of something underneath the microscope, essentially. And so wherever you don't have something on the microscope slide, you have more light shining through. So this, obviously here where there's nothing, that's where most light's going to come through. So the lumen, the hollow part, okay? Well, this is the deepest layer. remember I also said in when I'm talking about body planes and or directional terms, remember that? Deep versus superficial. The deepest layers are next to the lumen. The superficial layers are on the outside. Okay, superficial and then deep. And obviously you can see that there's different kinds of tissues here. Here's a tissue, there's a tissue, here's a tissue, etc. And there's some tissue out here. What are they? Well, you're always gonna have epithelial tissue, connective tissue, and muscle tissue most of the time. Epithelial tissue always lines the inside, so this inner lining is gonna be an epithelial tissue. Okay? And then it covers, like on the surface of your skin, the epidermis, so epithelial tissue. And everything else sandwiched in between is gonna be connective tissue. All right, so let's have a look. The previous slide was magnified maybe about 40 times. Here we are about 200 times looking down the lumen. A much prettier slide. Nice view. You can see some very distinct cells right here. This is the inner lining. Some other tissue out here, and then there's some other tissue right here. So what is everything? Well, this inner lining, all hollow organs, okay? All structures that have a lumen are always lined with a mucous membrane or a mucosa, okay? All mucosae or all mucous membranes are made out of epithelial tissue, different types of epithelial tissue, okay? What kind of epithelial tissue is this? The esophageal mucosa, the mucous membrane that's lining the inside of the esophagus, is a stratified squamous epithelium, just like the skin. However, it's not made out of keratinocytes. It's made out of non-keratin producing epithelial cells. So this is non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. So it doesn't form a dry, flaky membrane. It's a mucous membrane. When you think mucus, think moist, right? Mucosa, the mucus. This is succulent and slippery, all right? The outside of your body is not slippery unless you're a bullfrog or a catfish, right? The bullfrogs and catfish do not have a keratinized integument, okay? Mucus, all right? This is keratinized. Or I mean, this is non-keratinized, just like the slick surface of a catfish. Because you want it to be slick and lubricated as stuff is sliding down the lumen of your esophagus on its way to the stomach. And you can tell that because you look underneath the microscopes. This is the dead layer of cells. These are the living layer cells. You can see nuclei and all that. But up here, you can't see the nuclei and everything. But it's not dry and flaky. It's just kind of nothing going on in the cells. It's kind of forming this boundary. But the whole thing from here all the way to here is stratified squamous epithelium that's non-keratinized. But from here to here is dead. From here to here is living. See how that works? All right, zoom back out so you look at the whole thing. This is where we were. Okay, stratified squamous epithelium, non-keratinized. Now we're going to look at the tissue that's underneath it. All right, looks like it forms like little papillae as well, doesn't it? Remember, this is a mucosa. The tissue that's underneath the mucosa is the submucosa. Okay, submucosa is just like the dermis of the skin. You got epidermis, dermis, you got mucosa, submucosa. So the submucosa is made out of basically the same thing that your reticular layer is made out of, dense, irregular connective tissue, okay? Some books might argue that this is particularly up here in these little papillae, is areolar. That's fine. Remember I said the only difference between areolar and dense irregular is the amount of collagen fibers. And so I always like to say that submucosa in general, submucosa is made out of dense irregular. And that's what I call it. And if I ask you to name this tissue, you call it dense irregular. Or just memorize, hey, submucosa, dense irregular, like that. Out from that, you can see this is a different kind of tissue altogether right here. All right, it's muscle. Now, there's three different types of muscle. You got skeletal muscle, you got smooth muscle, you have cardiac muscle. Okay, but which of the three is this? Well, obviously, it's not going to be cardiac because that's only in the heart. Now, it could be smooth, but why? How do you know smooth from skeletal? Well, smooth muscle is also called visceral muscle. And visceral muscle means like muscle of organs. And of course, this is an organ, a hollow organ, and you would expect to have smooth muscle in the wall. But the esophagus is kind of a weird exception. And that's why I'm looking at the esophagus, because it's special. Okay. Skeletal muscle is always associated, with the skeleton and bones and cartilage and so forth. There's no bone or cartilage in this thing, so why would you have skeletal muscle? Well, skeletal muscle is also voluntary muscle. Smooth muscle is involuntary. You don't have conscious control over how the smooth muscle operates, but you do have control over how skeletal muscle operates. So like when you swallow, that's voluntary, right? You gulp, you swallow like that, that's voluntary. But you're introducing material into the lumen of the esophagus, and then there's going to be a point where the esophagus takes over, and so it's going to gradually segue to smooth muscle all the way down to the stomach, and then from the stomach all the way for the rest of the GI tract, it's going to be smooth muscle in the walls. No, never any skeletal after that. So this section of the esophagus is taken near the oral cavity. Okay, and this is not human. This is from a mouse. And we look at a mouse because we can fit the whole thing on the slide there. You couldn't put the whole thing on the slide from the human, just a little piece of it. That wouldn't be fun to look at. Anyway, I recognize this as skeletal versus smooth because they have certain characteristics, morphological characteristics that separate it from the other two types of muscles. For example, if you look at the shapes of these cells, these big old kind of squarish, some of them kind of rectangular looking structures. Each one of them is a cell, okay, a cell. But if you look at the little black dots you see everywhere, those are nuclei, okay? And so if you say nuclei, that's plural for nucleus. And so typically animal cells have one nucleus per cell. Okay, so like all these are nuclei, that's one nucleus per cell. Okay, some of these nuclei are huge. These nuclei are small, tiny little things. All right. But if you see a whole bunch of them, a whole bunch of nuclei per cell, then that means that the cells themselves are multinucleated. And some cells are like that, where they have many nuclei per cell. And skeletal muscle is multinucleated. And so that's the only type of muscle that's going to be like that. So if you see multinucleated muscle cells, like all these guys are, excuse me, then you know that it's skeletal muscle. Okay, and there you go, skeletal muscle in the esophagus. All right. Hey, that's the esophagus. Now we're segueing to the kidney. This is our third slide. See, slide number 3. And the kidney, I always describe the kidney as a tubular organ because it's jam-packed full of a bunch of little bitty tubes, all right? They're called renal tubules. And you can see them, some of them cut in cross-section. It looks like little donuts. And some of them kind of longitudinal section, like this. So they're everywhere, tubules, renal tubules everywhere, okay? And then every once in a while, you got this big blob, this little thing right here, and a big blob right there, and a little blob right there. What are these blob things? Those are specialized capillaries in the kidneys. They're called glomeruli, or singular would be a glomerulus. So this is a glomerulus, this is a glomerulus, this is a glomerulus, and that's a glomerulus. You the top of another little glomerulus right there. So you look at this field of view, you got tubules everywhere, and these glomeruli. You're looking at the kidney. That's a dead giveaway that you're looking at the kidney because only the kidney's going to look like this, okay? And of course, the glomeruli are made out of certain kind of tissues, and the tubules are made out of certain kind of tissues, et cetera. But we'll look at them and see what they're made out of because they're all, you see cells everywhere, nuclei, little bitty dark purple rings. Those are the nuclei, okay? And the little dark little spots, those are all nuclei of a different kind of tissue, okay? So we'll look at them. So look at this. This is a zoomed in view, probably about 400 times of just the tubules, okay? Here I have simple cuboidal epithelium in most tubules. There's tubules everywhere. See these little bitty rings? You can tell that it's one cell layer thick of not flat cells or column-shaped cells, but little cube-shaped cells. They're kind of cube-shaped, kind of like a little square. And then another characteristic of cuboidal cells, cells are shaped like a cube, is that the nuclei are nice and round and centrally located. See that? Nice, pretty little rings. One cell layer thick, nice little rings, simple cuboidal epithelium, opposed to like stratified squamous or simple squamous or stratified cuboidal. Simple. The word simple just means one cell layer thick, opposed to stratified, which means many cell layers thick. Remember I said the epidermis of the skin is like 20, 30 little cells thick, that deep? These guys aren't. Each one of these tubules is made out of one cell layer thick of these cube-shaped cells. Simple cuboidal epithelium. Look at that. Now, look at this. This is a zoomed-in view of the glomerulus. Okay. Now let me tell you something about the glomerulus. Remember I told you it was a capillary. Okay. You have different types of capillaries in your body. Some of them have special names. Some of them don't. In the kidney, this particular capillary has a special name. It's called the glomerulus. The word glomerulus means little globe, like a little round, little sphere, like a little globe. And but it's a capillary. But I'm going to just let you know, sometimes you can't really tell by looking at it. It's simple squamous, but I know that it's a capillary. And all capillaries, doesn't matter what you call them, what their name is, they're always going to be made out of simple squamous epithelium. So if you recognize the glomerulus, then you should just automatically know that it's made out of one cell layer thick of flat cells. And all capillaries are made out of flat cells because you want the walls of the capillaries to be very, 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 very thin. And you can't make it any thinner than one cell layer thick of flat cells. So simple squamous epithelium. And then here I have in parentheses, in the parietal layer of Bowman's capsule and the glomerulus. What does that mean? Well, this is the glomerulus. All right, see that? That's where the blood initially comes to the kidney and is where it's filtered, okay? And a filter produces a filtrate, okay? It's not urine just yet, okay? It's just a filtrate. The filtrate is collected in this space right here, which is called Bowman's space or the glomerular space or whatever kind of space you can call it space. Just a space. The filtrate is going to collect in there. Well, that space isn't just random. It sounds like my ceiling's going to collapse. Anyway, kind of scary. Anyway, there's a membrane that encloses this whole thing. Okay, the membrane encapsulating that space is Bowman's capsule. Okay, so that you can barely see it right here. That's the parietal layer of Bowman's capsule. Okay, and so you kind of see that the little flat cells kind of form a little ring around there. That's simple squamous epithelium. Here you're looking down on the simple squamous cells. Here you're looking at the kind of the profile. See, there's its nucleus right there, the little dark spot, and then the kind of reddish zones on either side of it would be the cytoplasm. A lot of times I will say the simple squamous epithelial cells in profile anyway kind of look like fried eggs, where the yolk of a fried egg would be like the nucleus and the white of the egg would be like the cytoplasm. So look, there's the yolk, then there's the white, the yolk, and the white over here. So simple squamous epithelial cells going around. So there's two places you can see simple squamous, forming the Bowman's capsule, or what they call the parietal layer of Bowman's capsule, and then the surface of the glomerulus. Okay, so there's two spots right there. Now, still in the kidney. Here's the kidney over here. See the renal tubules right there? I don't see any glomeruli, but anyway, there's some other structures there. And then out here, this is the outside of the kidney. And this is another kind of tissue. See where it says I was saying with periphrenic. It's not periphrenic. Perinephric. Okay, perinephric means around nephric means kidney. Perinephric region or perinephric fat means the fat around the kidney. And remember, we looked at adipose connective tissue, and here it is again. Here, it's not forming a thermal insulating layer, you know, like it does in this subcutaneous layer or the hypodermis. Different function, same tissue, but different function. It functions in thermal insulation in the skin. Man, it sounds like the ceiling's about to fall in. So we got it all recorded. You might see something crazy happen in my office. See, I'm on the third floor of the roof. Somebody's about to come down. They're up there jackhammering or sawing something. Anyway, perinephric. The fat with its adipocytes, you know, of course, it insulates against heat loss, but it also insulates against mechanical trauma. So it's mechanical insulation around the kidneys. Because you think about the position of the kidneys, there's no bony armament protecting the kidneys. It's kind of a little precarious location in your lower back, you know. It's basically the same position in all vertebrates. You know, it's in that lumbar region. And in mammals, in the lumbar region, there's no bone, there's no ribs there. And so the kidneys are packed in an adipose capsule, or here they call the adipose capsule perinephric fat. And so there you go. It's just another cool thing to see, some adipose connective tissue. Now, this is our fourth slide. The ear, the pinna. The pinna, they call it like the external ear on most non-humans, pinnae. On humans, they usually refer to it as an auricle. But only mammals have external ears. Jeez. It's kind of scary. Anyway. I might move. What am I talking about? Ears, external ears. Okay. Well, okay, this is the external ear from a mouse. And what they do is it's a you can say a horizontal section through the ear. All right. Jeez. And it sounds like they're right on top of me. And I can hear debris falling on my ceiling tiles. It's kind of creepy. Anyway, back to the ear. Now you look at your ear, and that's like a mammal thing. You know, you get this thing that's in a structure attached to the outside of your skull. There's no bone in it, but you can tell that it has some kind of structural, skeletal integrity in it to hold it upright and give it shape. And of course, that's cartilage. And so there's a horizontal section through the ear, and you're looking down on it, and this is the center of it. And here they label it auricular cartilage. Now, the word auricular isn't the name of a type of tissue per se. The word auricular just means of the auricle. And your auricle is your external ear. So it's just ear cartilage is what they're saying. Okay. Here it is in the center. And then what do you have on either side of your ear? Can you all hear that? Let's hurry up and finish this. I can get the hell out of here. This is crazy. Oh my God. Jesus. Anyway, can you hear the stuff falling? And what the hell am I talking about? This is like really distracting me. Well, you get skin on either side. This is basically, well, if you look at your ear, you got skin on, the inside of your ear, on the back side of your ear, you got skin. A little mouse's ear, you got skin on the forward facing portion of the ear, the anterior surface of the ear, and then skin on the posterior surface of the ear. And so basically from here up is the same tissue from here down. Okay, you see that. See skin right there, subcutaneous tissue, et cetera, et cetera. And so right here, I just point out, I could have two arrows. I got an arrow pointing here and an arrow pointing here. Stratified squamous epithelium keratinized, epidermis. There it is right there. How to do that? Just draw another arrow right there. Okay. Now they're pointing out some other stuff in here. Just don't worry about that just yet. But there's your stratified squamous. And a member of the skin is always going to be keratinized. And then here I'm pointing out the cartilage, elastic cartilage with chondrocytes. And that's this auricular cartilage. And cartilage is very, very distinct. Okay. You have these big open spaces. You see that? Those only cartilage has that. Those big open spaces are called lacunae, or singular would be a lacuna. And the word lacuna means little lake. It's like these little pits that are in cartilage to accommodate the cartilage cell, which are called chondrocytes. And so here I have elastic cartilage with chondrocytes. And I have a zoomed in better picture of that here in a minute, okay? But this type of cartilage that's in the ear is called elastic cartilage. You'll see that there's three different types of cartilages. There's elastic cartilage, fibrocartilage, and hyaline cartilage. But elastic cartilage only occurs in two places in your body, in your ear and your epiglottis. And of course, this is your ear, and you have elastic cartilage in your ear, okay? And here, and the next thing I'm pointing to is the dermis of the skin that's underneath the epidermis right there. And for the most part, what you see right here, of course, technically there would be a papillary layer, but it's very insignificant. So the bulk of your dermis here is reticular. So it's just all dense irregular. And then this looks like dense irregular you'd have anywhere else. This is all dense irregular connective tissue right here. In the dermis of the skin. And then look right here. You see this little band of tissue on top of the cartilage? You see it right there? It looks just like this stuff. And it is the exact same stuff. So here and here, it's also dense irregular connective tissue, but forming something completely different. Because, tissues can have other functions. Remember, fat functioned in thermal insulation in the skin, and it served as mechanical insulation in the kidneys. Well, here, dense irregular connective tissue forms the dermis, but it also forms the perichondrium. The word perichondrium means surrounding the cartilage. All cartilage, doesn't matter where it is. If it's in the ear or in your nose or in your ribs or wherever you can have cartilage, it's always, always, always enveloped in this fibrous connective tissue membrane called perichondrium. That literally means around the cartilage. And you can see it really nicely right here. You can see this little edge right here. You got collagen fibers, and you actually little cells associated with the collagen fibers, which are called fibroblasts. So these little black dots are fibroblasts. And then you get fibroblasts here. That's perichondrium. So anywhere you find perichondrium, you should just know, oh yeah, that's dense irregular connective tissue. Okay, it's very, very thin though. Okay, this is our fifth slide. But do we do our fifth slide today, or we save that for next week? Y'all remember? Let me get out of here for a sec. Let me show you something. Get out of this. I'm still sharing my screen, I think. So you guys are seeing everything that I'm doing. And I'm going to do it like this. I thought a quick link. Well, it's not. Go to my courses. You guys are section 90, right? And so I got all kinds of classes on my courses. Your my courses can have your schedule. And then here's this is you guys right here. See section 90. And see material for practical 1. There's your Zoom meetings. We got recorded Click on it. Look, there's the meet. This is the Zoom meeting from last week, by the way. So material for practical 1, you click on that, click, and let's zoom down here. This is what we're looking at right now. This is your histology PowerPoint, okay? And then right here, before I was zooming, the only thing I would give my class was this handout right here, okay? Click on that, and this is what we go. I'm gonna open on it. You can open and print this out if you want to, or not. It's just up to you. I'm just gonna show you what it is. And see, it's a list the tissues, and oh, yeah. And then here's the next one. But I think I talk about that one next week. Is this what I want to look at? Let's see. Let me get that out the way. Right here, course policy. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, pinna. Next week, see right there? That's where I decided to do the epiglottis. So next week, we're going to do epiglottis, lung, trachea, small intestine, and xiphoid. So I'm going to save that for next week. So we finished a little early. Ain't bad. I'll probably rush through it because I'm kind of scared. So it's kind of creepy up here on the 3rd floor of the science building. So you guys have any questions about anything? No? So some Zooms will be an hour-ish. Some of them will be a little under, some of them will be a little over. So it looks like today we went a little under, so that's okay. I don't think anybody's gonna complain. But if you have any questions, whatever, let me know. Does anybody want to go to the lab today for between 11 and 11:30? I guess in between 11 and noon. Well, it's from 11 to 11:30 and 11:30 to noon. Maybe you get your little groups. But I'm not going to go if nobody's going to show up. So if you are going to show up, let me know and we'll meet you. Okay. But if nobody's going to go, I'll be in my office. So you can text me, or you can't really text me, email me. That's what you should do. Okay. So no questions. Okay. Well, like I said, if you guys want to look ahead, feel free to, save that PowerPoint. You can look ahead and see what you get to see, and we'll pick up next week. Okay. All right. I will see you guys then. Adios.